For 4,000 years they were buried in silence, not metaphorically, literally. The women of ancient Sumer, the world's first civilization, the people who invented writing, the wheel and the concept of cities, were buried in silence because the civilization that came after them, the Akkadians and Babylonians, progressively erased what women had been. But the DNA does not lie, and the ancient bones do not forget. When researchers began extracting and analyzing ancient DNA from burial sites across Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, they found something that contradicted the standard narrative of ancient women as passive, subordinate, invisible. The genetic record, combined with cuneiform tablets, reveals a picture of Sumerian women that nobody in the 19th or 20th century expected. The women of Sumer were not what we thought, and what the DNA reveals about who they actually were is one of the most surprising stories. Before we understand the DNA, we must understand the mystery. Nobody knows where the Sumerians came from. The Sumerians emerged 5,000 years ago as a fully formed civilization, with writing, monumental architecture, and complex religious systems. They called themselves the black-headed people. They spoke a language, Sumerian, that is completely isolated from every other known language family. It is not related to Semitic languages like Akkadian, Arabic, or Hebrew. It is not related to Indo-European languages like Greek or Persian. Sumerian is a linguistic island, and its origins remain one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient history. The ancient DNA evidence has complicated this. A 2022 study found that Mesopotamia was genetically diverse long before the Sumerians emerged. A mixture of populations from the Zagros Mountains, the Levant, and Anatolia, but the specific profile of the Sumerians remains elusive. Ancient DNA preservation in the hot, dry conditions of southern Mesopotamia is exceptionally difficult. However, mitochondrial DNA found connections to the Indian subcontinent, suggesting migration routes that predate the civilization. Other studies found genetic connections to the Caucasus, East Africa, and Central Asia. The Sumerians were a cosmopolitan people. They were a civilization built at the crossroads of the ancient world, and their women were at the very center of it. The most dramatic direct evidence of the status of Sumerian women comes from one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The Royal Cemetery of Ur, excavated between 1922 and 1934 by the British-American archaeologist Leonard Woolley. The cemetery contained 16 royal tombs dating to approximately 2600 to 2500 BCE, the early dynastic period of Sumer, what scholars call the Golden Age. What Woolley found inside the tombs shocked him and has continued to fascinate researchers ever since. In the most elaborate tombs, the central burial was a woman. The women were interred with extraordinary wealth, headdresses of gold, lapis lazuli, and carnelian that took weeks to reconstruct from the fragments found. Lyres decorated with golden bulls' heads. Jewelry of a quality and quantity that has not been surpassed in any other ancient find from the region. Surrounding these women in careful formation were dozens of attendants, men and women who appear to have been sacrificed to accompany their queen. Woolley interpreted these burials as evidence of great queens whose deaths were significant enough to warrant the sacrifice of their entire retinue. Modern analysis has refined this. Isotope analysis of bones has revealed that the central female figures had very different dietary histories from many attendants. The queens had eaten well, consistently, throughout their lives. Some of the attendants showed signs of poorer nutrition or different geographic origins. The royal women of Ur were not just local aristocrats. They were connected to a network of people from across the ancient world. In death as in life, the queens of Sumer appear to have been cosmopolitan figures at the center of a network that stretched far beyond Ur. Among the Sumerian women who have left traces, one stands apart so completely that her story defies assumptions: Enheduanna. Daughter of Sargon of Akkad, high priestess of the moon god Nanna at Ur, and the first named author in all of recorded human history. Let that sink in. The first person in history whose name is attached to a specific body of literary work is a woman. She lived around 2285 BCE. She wrote hymns and prayers in Sumerian so powerful and sophisticated that they were copied and preserved for centuries after her death. She is the founding figure of the literary tradition that eventually gave rise to the Bible, to Greek epic poetry, and all subsequent traditions. There is a disc found at Ur that shows Enheduanna in a procession, identifiable by her distinctive headdress and an inscription naming her. Enheduanna's hymns to the goddess Inanna are remarkable documents. They are sophisticated theological arguments and personal laments. They describe her experience of political crisis. She was driven from her position by a usurper and had to appeal to Inanna to restore her. As the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, the Semitic king who conquered Sumer, she would have been a mixture of Semitic and Sumerian ancestry. Enheduanna was a bridge between these worlds, appointed by her father to serve in the most sacred Sumerian religious institution. Writing in the Sumerian language that was her father's conquered tongue, she secured a legacy that remains etched in stone and history. The cuneiform tablets excavated from Sumerian sites across Iraq over the past century contain thousands of administrative records, contracts, inventories, and legal documents. When researchers began systematically analyzing these tablets for evidence of women's roles, what they found was not what Victorian archaeologists had expected. A collection of cuneiform tablets discovered at Gashana describes the administration of an estate run by a woman named Simat Ishtaran in the 21st century BCE. The tablets document her running the estate after her husband died, supervising male workers, making financial decisions, and conducting trade. The Gashana archive shows women supervised men, received salaries equal to their male counterparts, and even worked in construction. David Owen has called it our first real archival discovery of an institution run by a woman. Across the Sumerian record, women appear as temple administrators, merchants, physicians, scribes, and judges. The goddess Ninsun appears in the texts not as a passive figure, but as an active agent who gives advice and makes decisions with authority. Scholars believe this divine female authority reflected real social reality. Women held positions of genuine power in temple economies and administrative systems. Archaeologist Julia Asher Grave has described the early dynastic period as a golden age for women, noting that Sumerian structure wasn't strictly patriarchal. Accession through the female line was possible, and women occupied high positions in state, economy, and cult, holding substantial legal rights. The genetic origins of the Sumerian civilization remain a debated question. DNA preservation in southern Iraq is poor, and sequenced genomes are limited. A 2022 study analyzed ancient DNA from pre-pottery Neolithic sites in southeastern Turkey and northern Iraq, adjacent to the Sumerian heartland. They found these Neolithic populations were a mixture of distinct ancestral groups, contributing significantly to populations across Anatolia, Europe, and South Asia. A study of remains at Terka on the Euphrates found haplogroups characteristic of South Asian populations, suggesting early migrations from the Indian subcontinent. Analyzing the marsh Arabs of southern Iraq, a population with cultural continuity to ancient Sumerians, revealed a fascinating maternal genetic profile. Contributions from South and Southwest Asia are more prominent in the maternal line than the paternal line, indicating diverse geographic origins for women. This suggests that women in the ancient movements that shaped Mesopotamian civilization came from further away than the men. The women of ancient Sumer were more connected to distant populations, bringing their genes, knowledge, and cultural practices into the first cities. The golden age of Sumerian women did not last. By the time of the Old Babylonian period, approximately 2000 to 1600 BCE, the status of women in Mesopotamia had declined dramatically. The Codex Hammurabi, the famous law code of the Babylonian king Hammurabi, dated to approximately 1750 BCE, treats women explicitly as second-class citizens. Women's legal rights, their property rights, their freedom of movement, their access to economic life, all of these had been curtailed. What happened? Several factors appear to have contributed. The Akkadian conquest of Sumer in the 24th century BCE began a process of cultural transformation that progressively marginalized Sumerian practices. The Akkadian language, which gradually replaced Sumerian, had different grammatical gender conventions and different cultural assumptions about gender roles. The rise of the professional male priesthood also contributed. In early Sumer, women had been central to temple administration and ritual. As male priests accumulated institutional power, women were progressively excluded from the higher ranks of religious authority. And the genetic evidence, while indirect, suggests something else. The populations that conquered and transformed Sumer brought with them different gender norms. The steppe populations from the north and east, who contributed to the demographic transformations, appear to have had more patriarchal social structures. As these populations mixed with the Mesopotamian gene pool, they brought their cultural assumptions with them. The story of Sumerian women matters far beyond the history of one ancient civilization. It matters because it demonstrates something that challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between civilization and gender. We have been taught that the patriarchal organization of society is the natural or default condition of human civilization. That male dominance is somehow the inevitable product of biology or of the demands of agricultural society. The Sumerians challenged this narrative directly. The world's first civilization gave women positions of genuine power. The world's first civilization invented writing, the wheel, mathematics, and the concept of the city. The first named author in human history was a woman. The most elaborately buried figures in the royal cemetery were women. The administrative record shows women supervising men, earning equal pay and running institutions, and then it was taken away. Not because it was biologically inevitable, not because women were incapable, but because subsequent conquerors brought different assumptions, enforced by institutions that the Sumerians themselves had created. The DNA tells us that Sumerian women were genetically connected to distant populations in ways that their male contemporaries were not. They were, in the most literal biological sense, bridges between worlds. The ancient bones and the ancient genes and the ancient clay tablets all tell the same story. For a brief and extraordinary moment at the dawn of civilization, women held the center. And what happened to that moment is a history that is only now being fully recovered with tools of ancient DNA science. The world's first civilization, the first named author in human history, a royal cemetery where women were the most elaborately buried. Administrative tablets document women supervising men, a genetic record showing women came from more diverse origins than their male contemporaries, and a golden age that was progressively erased by conquests and cultural transformations. The women of Sumer were buried in silence for 4,000 years. The DNA is giving them their voice back. Subscribe to Hidden Origins, because the real story of who people were is always more complex than the version that survived.